Hi, my name is Audrey Castells, and I will be doing my presentation on Navy spending. Military spending. In 2019, the military budget was $718.69 billion. Of that sum of money, $161.04 billion goes to the Navy, and since the Marines stem from the Navy, $46.04 billion goes to the Marines. So, in total, the Navy gets around $207.1 billion for their annual budget. This is the largest sum of money given to any military branch. $207.1 billion is then divided into military personnel, operation and maintenance, shipbuilding, aircraft procurement, research, development, testing, and engineering. So next, we will be getting into more specifics about the United States Navy. Navy overview. The Navy was founded on October 13, 1775. Then, the Department of the Navy was founded on April 30th, 1798. There are a set number of goals that the Navy wants to achieve, some of which being training missions at sea with foreign navies, regional security, at-sea rescues, dealing with oil spills, reconnaissance/intelligence missions to gather enemy data, medical care programs for the Navy, Marines, or perhaps people near a war theater. Here's a picture of a rescue mission from the Navy. Next, we will be getting into the specifics about ships, how shipbuilding and the cost of ships influence the Navy. So, Navy ships. For 2020, the budget for the ships was set at $24 billion. The long-term goal for the Navy is to attain 355 ships by the year 2030. In early 2021, the budget was decreased by $4 billion from shipbuilding. Instead of the $4 billion being invested into other parts of the United States government, it was reinvested back into the Navy personnel, operations and maintenance, development, and research. For 2021, the Navy would still want to attain 8 more battleships, and they're wanting to have 306 deployable ships by the end of 2021. Comparing the ship numbers to last year in 2020, there were 297 deployable ships. Next, moving into Navy personnel. A large, if not the majority of the budget goes into paying for Navy personnel. As you can see, these numbers are from the year 2017, 2018, and 2019. The Marines are included in this list, but at the bottom, their numbers are then separated from the Navy's cost. Looking at this list, many Navy expenses are directed at their personnel, such as military personnel from the Navy being at the top of this list, and then reserves then being slightly lower. Personnel health care is put into the list, housing is put into the list as well, and then the rest of the list has shipbuilding expenses as well as other operation expenses. For military personnel, currently about $55.2 billion are put into taking care and paying military personnel. Due to the generous benefits of the Navy, the budget can be broken down into paychecks for sailors, food and housing, healthcare, vacation time, education, any travel expenses such as traveling to boot camp, and even retirement if one were to choose to make the Navy a career. So what does the Constitution say about the military? In quotation marks, the Constitution grants Congress the power to raise and support armies and navy, to suppress insurrections and repel invasions, and other military-related government rules. So, in essence, our government has the power to not only protect the people, but to protect the people from other potential governments as well. For my interview, I interviewed this gentleman on the right about his opinions on Navy spending and if it has ever impacted him. The person I interviewed was Thomas Chassie. He was commissioned as an officer in October of 1983, then retired 30 years later in October of 2013 as a Navy captain, which was not only his rank but his position as captain of the ship. He was captain of the USS Iwo Jima. On this slide is a picture of the USS Iwo Jima, which again was the ship that Thomas Chassie was captain of. I personally wanted to interview a former Navy captain rather than someone who works for Navy operations for the sole purpose of seeing how it might impact someone who is subject to Navy operations and to see if it ever got in the way of the way their ship was functioning. Currently, Thomas Chassis travels and inspects Navy ships to see if they are in good condition for deploying and functioning properly. For my interview with Thomas Chassis, I wanted to highlight two rather complex questions. The first being, was he ever impacted on a differentiating Navy budget? This question kind of encompassed if the budget ever impacted his ship's readiness or his pay. So I'll play about 2 clips on this question from our interview. Here is the first clip.
Well, that's a natural thing. I don't care what branch of the service you're in. I was never, I don't think, directly impacted. When I was commanding officer, that's when I was closest to. There's always budgetary concerns, no matter what position you have. But I was never put in a position, or my ship's readiness was ever put in a position of being compromised because of the budget. Whether I was lucky, for the most part, like when I commanded Iwo Jima, which is a pretty new ship. Just like anything, when it's new, you're spending less on it. When the ship ages, then you're spending more just because the equipment is aging and whatnot. But I can't ever say, even though the defense budgets waxed and waned over time, that I was really impacted. I seemed to be able to get all the resources I required to keep my ships ready.
For this section of that part of the interview, for him, because his ship was so new, that no matter what the budget was, his ship didn't require as much maintenance or money as the older ships. So he personally was not impacted by a differentiating budget on his ship. This next part kind of explains if his pay was ever impacted or if other people were impacted on a differentiating Navy budget.
No, I don't think so. The Navy, and at certain times, like personnel, is a big output of the budget, and I think sometimes we cut personnel where it may have affected the readiness of the ship, where you're losing sailors because the Navy wants to, cut the budget, save money, but that impacted the readiness of a ship, or we had to send personnel to do duties not directly associated with the Navy, which affected us. So we have gone through some high points and low points of Navy manning, let me put it that way. And for the Navy spending, the second biggest outlay is in personnel, for people spending. I think sometimes we cut that led to readiness issues on the ships.
For that second clip of the interview, it sounded like other people's ships were sometimes not at their full readiness because they were not as new as Iwo Jima, which was commissioned in 2001. It also seems like when the Navy wants to cut their budgeting, it tends to be targeted more at lower ranked sailors. Moving sailors around or not having as many sailors on a ship may cut costs initially, but then it is hard to say whether it will impact the efficiency of the Navy and ultimately the protection the Navy is able to supply to the United States. In the final clip, I wanted to ask a somewhat controversial question, which was, should the Navy spending / military spending be increased or decreased in your opinion? And here is the third clip from that interview.
That is a good one. I think and quite honestly, I don't know what the defense budget is right now, but I think we're probably in a good spot. I do think the Navy, if the United States has to figure out, do I still want to be worldwide committed or not? And if we do, we probably, again, I'm not sure about the Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, etc., but for the Navy, if we want to keep our worldwide presence, we probably need, for a fact, I do know we need more ships, which would mean we need more spending in the Navy.
I personally was very intrigued with his answer. I do think it is important that the United States considers giving up their spot as the most powerful military or the most powerful economy if they want to tackle the issue of the national deficit. There are some concerns, like with China's economy and their growing military, Russia's growing military, North Korea with their weapons of mass destruction building, and even Middle Eastern countries where there's terrorism. The United States needs to look into whether they want to be a security guard for all other countries or just protect themselves and look where they want to spend their money and where it would be most important. To continue with the topic of other countries, China has definitely been in competition with the United States for the past several decades. China does a large amount of trading and has been focusing on building their economy to be larger than the United States. But in addition, they have been working on modernizing and increasing their military power. Before the 1990s, China's focus was more on civil infrastructure and economic reform rather than military forces. However, after 1990, China started to modernize their military forces. They did this by emphasizing maritime security, long distance mobility operations, offensive operations, and cyber operations. China currently has 20 outposts in the Parcel Islands, 7 in the Spratlys. The goal for China is to become the new status quo rather than the United States currently being that. China currently controls 90% of the South China Sea, which makes this a very geographically sensitive area for the United States and China. This also brought the United States' attention on potentially putting limits to expansion. A worry for the United States Navy is that at those 27 outposts in the South China Sea, China has missiles able to take down aircraft carriers from 1,500 miles away. Coronavirus and the Navy. Over the past year, coronavirus has definitely made the world reconsider what they are spending in order to take care of their civilians. For the United States, COVID requires a detailed look into the civil and national security spending. With the hospitalizations and unemployment going on in the United States, the fiscal balance between military spending and taking care of civilians has to be rebalanced. Due to possibly taking money away from the military budget, allows larger threats like China and Russia to become even bigger threats, and smaller threats like North Korea and Iran becoming a little more prominent. There's also a fear of federal budget cuts being in national security and civil domestic programs, since that's most likely where the money would come out of. There have been thoughts about using Navy bases and hospitals for severe coronavirus patients, as well as a place for quarantining individuals. A positive outcome of decreasing the military budget due to COVID would be that it could potentially aid in the national deficit. Last slide. The United States needs to reconsider its policy, especially with coronavirus. Fiscal policy is the use of government spending and taxation to influence the economy. Both the levels and allocation of spending and taxation can influence economic outcomes. In essence, the United States needs to figure out how it's going to use its taxes, if it's going to increase taxes, if it's going to decrease taxes, in order to be able to afford coronavirus relief while keeping the economy afloat. The United States also has to look at its monetary policy as well. Monetary policy regulates the money supply and interest rates to control inflation and stabilize the economy to achieve national economic goals. This also plays a part to fiscal policy with how much money is going to be worth. The United States does not want inflation to skyrocket, but it also doesn't want inflation to plummet. The United States needs to budget very carefully in order to not get into an economic situation that they cannot dig themselves out of, or potentially decrease their military to where other military superpowers could overpower them. However, due to the size of the Navy, especially in other countries, they are not able to compete with the amount of aircraft carriers and ships that the United States have, so it isn't a large concern at the moment yet. These are my citations. I have my first 5 on this slide. The first citation is where I got some Navy budget statistics, just some specifics. The second one was from JSTOR, and that talked about how coronavirus has impacted the Navy. The third source is where I got a quote for the slide about the military and the Constitution. The fourth slide was about Navy budgeting, and that's where I got a lot of specifics about military personnel budgeting. The fifth site was the Navy's response to COVID-19 and it potentially hurting the military. On this slide, I got another article from JSTOR, and that was about the relationship between China and the United States and the changing military. The second source is another from JSTOR, and that was again about China's rising military power and how it correlates with the United States. The third was about the roles of the Navy. The fourth was about the roles of the Navy and the goals they have. And the fifth was about military personnel and the benefits they get and how cost factors into that. Thank you so much.